Hey, it's Russell Hall here, and you're about to watch a preview lesson of my course, BESSIE'S Bass Busters. Right now we're going to focus on something that is essential to a bass player's list of things to do, and that is to play in two. Playing in two is almost the closest you can get to dancing on the bass. The reason I say this is because quite literally, the music that was danced to was two-beat music. You could go back to the 1920s, the 1930s. Anytime you saw these large ballrooms of people, usually that kind of music was focused on the two-beat rather than four-beat music. What I mean by that is the emphasis is on 1 and 3 as opposed to all 4 beats. Really simple in theory, but very different in application. When we step further into the music of people such as Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, and even further out, we tend to think of that music as 4-beat music because now the emphasis on playing, in 4. But the basis of a bassist is always going to be in 2. The reason I say this is because the notes in between 1 and 3 oftentimes lead into each other. They don't necessarily have to be a 4-beat music. Somebody that is probably the greatest at demonstrating this in 4-beat music, in a 4-beat sensibility, is the incredible Israel Crosby. And the reason I say this is because he created 2-beat bass lines that had the sensibility of playing in 4, had the freedom of playing in 4. For example, so now, I didn't play exactly what Israel played, but I tried to play in his style of playing in 2, which is kind of dancing around the 2-beat. Similar to the previous exercise where we talk about rhythmic intensity, rhythmic intention, Israel Crosby created these bass lines that were very intentional, but also very open, very intense, but very malleable and flexible, like dancing. Now let's take a song, not But Not For Me, but instead something like Autumn Leaves. It's kind of in the same vein as the great Ron Carter. How does he create these 2-beat bass lines that create this dance that we talk about? Well, first, he takes the chords, he sees what they are, he takes the melody, he sees what it is, and he tries to create something that will really elevate all the other musicians, but at the same time ground the music. So at the same time he's elevating, he's grounding. So he's going to play roots, he's going to play thirds, he's going to play fifths, but then he's also going to push it forward. For example, So now, that was a lot of information. Very different to the style of Israel Crosby, but very similar in the sense that he's dancing, he's creating this air of mystery in his bass lines as he does. So, you know, young me is figuring out, okay, how do you do that? Like, how do you figure out how to create a two feel with such flexibility, but also so grounding, and I can clearly hear what the melody is. The great Ben Wolf, who was my teacher for, I'd say, probably 15 years, his first exercise for me is to hum the melody of the song and play in two. He got this exercise from the great Ray Brown, who was his teacher. So you at home, I want you to try humming the melody to Autumn Leaves while playing a two feel, and try to create that same flexibility, but also that same grounding. The two beat, oftentimes we think of the two beat and we're not sure what to play, so we'll just go. Half notes. Which is fine, that's great. But how do we elevate that? How do we take that into another territory? First, we have to understand what that is. That comes from the tuba, you know? So you'd hear early jazz music and you'll hear the tuba, like if they're playing a song like this, for example, they go, and so on and so forth. And then how do you get from that to then Ron Carter going, bridging the gap, singing the melody in your head or humming the melody out loud and playing in two. And at first it might be difficult because you're like, okay, how do I hum a melody and then remember the notes I gotta play on the bass? But you start off slow. Slow it down, even from where I just took it. And you go on and you go on and you keep playing it. And eventually you get to a point where you won't even have to play C minor at the top of the A section. You could even go, you know, you could play whatever notes. Like we said in exercises 2 before this, it's all about point A to point B. It doesn't matter what happened. As long as you get to point B, you gotta figure out a way. I'm gonna start at a note completely unrelated to the song. Yeah, it's all about the resolution. You know? You gotta think about this stuff as Lester Young would have thought about it. Anytime you hear him play, he plays these long extended phrases that almost feel like they're not even hitting the chord changes, not even even hinting at the chord changes. Very similar to Miles Davis too. But then he'll just squeak into that note that just resolves it and makes everything that happened before start to make sense. For example, because once you realize that the chords are all subjective, that every note kind of works as long as there's a clear resolution, a clear understanding of passing tones, clear understanding of half steps, possibilities are endless. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to learn more about my course, the details are down below.